record on this. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Katie.
Oh, Walter, good to see you.
You're my helpful connection.
Well,
nice to see you tonight.
It's great to see you.
I like the smile.
Thank you. It's great to see your face. I hope you've been well. Happy fall.
All right. So we're letting some people in, and we might wait a minute or two before getting started, but I did, the way we usually run things here is that if you have a question, you can type in the chat that you have a question or raise your hand, and I will keep a running list of everybody as they come in with their questions and call on people. And we'll try to get to as many as we can, but more often than not, there's a lot more people that have questions than we can get to in our hour. So we do have Jackson here, who is our new constituent services rep for our office, Jackson Paul. And
nice to meet you guys.
He is definitely able to help facilitate any questions over email afterwards if you don't get a chance to ask your question today.
How can I get my picture on there?
Oh, that's beyond me.
I just got my name up there. It's the first time this has ever happened.
Maybe you have your camera covered. Do you have your camera covered?
No.
There's a button for the Terry. Should be a button that says join with audio.
I hit that.
Well,
or the
join with video.
Start video.
Mute my audio. So start video.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Mingus.
Hey, buddy. How's it been? I haven't seen you in a while.
I know.
I hope you've been well.
Well, I'm getting by.
Well,
kind of hurt my back here a little bit, but other than that, I'm getting by.
Oh, no. Well, take care of that back. You only got one of them.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And so we'll have the commissioner speak for a couple minutes. And then I did have an emailed question in from Steve Gold, and I know that they might be on the call tonight. So we'll start with Steve. I can either read one of their questions, or Steve, you can speak and you'll be the first one. And then if anybody else wants to speak, please just raise your hand or type your name into the chat. Let me know, and I'll keep a running list, and we'll try to get through as many as people as we can tonight. So thank you all for coming. I'm Katie Meyer. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Office of Commissioner Mingus Mapps, and Jackson Paul is here. He's our new Constituent Services rep. And then of course, the Commissioner. So Commissioner Mapps, will you please take it away?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Katie. And thanks everyone for coming out tonight. It really is a joy to see so many old friends here. And I see some new faces too, and that is really wonderful. Especially for those of you who don't know me, let me take a minute and just introduce myself. My name's Mingus Mapps. I'm one of your representatives on Portland City Council. As of today, I've been on council for, I believe, 8 months and 13 days. And certainly those have been some of the most remarkable 8 months and 13 days of my life. Portland has a unique form of government, a commission form of government. I know a lot of you are local government pros and understand what that means. I won't go all into how our particular form of government works, but I think it is important that everyone here know that I am your commissioner in charge of the Water Bureau, your commissioner in charge of environmental services, which you probably think of as the Sewer Bureau, and the commissioner in charge of the Bureau of Emergency Communications, which is basically 911. If you have a problem with any of those services, the buck really does stop with me. So please reach out and let us know what your experiences there are. In addition to managing my bureaus, there are lots of issues I care about. And I think I'd like to open up today by just highlighting 4 challenges that I've been focused on, Katie's been focused on, Jackson's focused on, and the rest of our team over at City Hall have really been leaning into since we've been on council. Now, first, of course, we have COVID recovery. Since we've been on council, I've been really focused on trying to get vaccines into people's arms. We've been focused on trying to keep people housed and trying to keep mom and pop landlords whole. And as the city sort of emerges into the later phases of COVID, we're also focused on trying to figure out how to reopen both our economy and our public spaces. We've made some important work there, progress there, but obviously, thanks to the Delta variant, we have some ongoing challenges. The second issue we spend a lot of time working on in council and in my office in particular is public safety. There are many things that we need to do in this area. I think that we need to focus in on reinventing policing so that it is both fairer and people are safer. And we're taking several steps right now to make policing fairer. For example, we're in the process of setting up a new system of citizen-led police oversight that will provide new accountability to our police department. We're in the process of renegotiating the contract with the police union, and we should be at the end of those discussions very soon. And we're working with the Federal Department of Justice to make sure that the Portland Police Bureau adheres to the best practices. All of that is sort of on the reform side, but of course we all know that Portland faces some other public safety challenges, and my time in this job would be a failure if I don't also make Portland safer. We all know gun violence has exploded over the past year and a half. I think year to date, we have about 63, 64 homicides in the city. We have seen, I think by my last count, more than 840 some odd shootings in Portland. All of that is utterly unacceptable, and we have to make some change. I've done a couple of things since I've been on council to try to make people safer and specifically try to combat gun violence. Amongst the things that we've done is we have both budgeted for more police officers, and we've taken some steps to reorganize the police department so we get cops who had been working behind desk into cop cars and out patrolling the streets. So even though I would have liked to grow the police department more, we've actually managed to actually get far more cops on the streets than you would expect given the expenditures that we've made. We have also set up a new police unit which focuses specifically on gun crime, and we actually partner with the federal law enforcement agencies to help supplement that important workforce. And of course, we've also made some important new investments in violence prevention programs. Having said all of that, I also recognize that the violence we see on our streets is out of control, and we really need to do more. And I have ideas about what more we can do. The third issue I want to highlight, and we've been focused on, is houselessness. We have several thousand, more than 4,000 Portlanders sleeping on the streets every night. Basically touches every block in the city of Portland. That's inhumane both for the people who live on the streets, and it's a challenge for those of us who live in neighborhoods who hope that we have high functioning, safe neighborhoods. That's why council's in the process of setting up 6 new managed camps for houseless Portlanders. We should see the first of those camps go online in a matter of weeks. Since I've been on council, we've also passed reforms to make it easier for nonprofit groups to set up houseless shelters, and we're very proud of that. And we have passed new rules which define spaces where houseless folks are not allowed to camp. So for example, at this point, it is officially illegal for people to camp adjacent to a school, adjacent to a hospital, or within 10 feet of a business. Actually enforcing that is obviously a challenge, but again, at least we have begun to draw some parameters here, which hopefully will restore some order to our streets. And the last issue that I've been focused on is the environment. As the commissioner in charge of the Water Bureau and the Bureau of Emergency or Environmental Services, I play a special role in protecting Portland's drinking water and our rivers. That's why the Water Bureau is in the process of building a new filtration plant, which will ensure that future generations of Portlanders have clean, safe water to drink. And that's why the Bureau of Environmental Services is about to launch a major cleanup of the Willamette River, which will leave our river cleaner than it has been at any time in the last 100 years. I'm very proud of that, and that's a legacy which I am glad to hand down to future Portlanders. There are many other issues that we are working on and that I care about, but I also think this is a good place for me to pause so we can open up this dialogue and take questions and take comments. And I believe Katie has lined up our first set of questions.
Yeah. So this is a question that Steve had emailed in. And so the question is, with the obvious constraints of the charter, what actions can you and your colleagues take now to cut across the Bureau silos and begin implementing actions at a crisis management pace? How can the public support this?
Great question. I think that was that mailed in by Steve?
Yeah. Steve,
one of the things, and I think this is an important take-home message, many of the challenges that Portland faces today are a product of our unique form of government. I mentioned it, I think, in my intro. We have a commission form of government, which really does mean that instead of having one mayor and 4 members of council, we literally have 5 different mayors. So we have, I mentioned that I'm the commissioner in charge of the Water Bureau, Environmental Services, and 911, and I have a lot of authority there. Joanne Hardesty is the commissioner in charge of TBOT. Dan Ryan basically controls housing. And one of the fundamental challenges of our form of government, or not of Portland today, is the challenges that we face are complex. They cut across bureau lines. So for example, if you want to address something about, do something about people camping in public parks, that requires both the commissioner in charge of houselessness, which is Dan Ryan, to have a plan, which is signed off on by the commissioner in charge of parks, which is Carmen Rubio, and you also need the commissioner in charge of HUC Group, which are the people who do outreach to houseless people on the same page. And it's just enormously difficult to get everyone on the same page for difficult challenges like that. That's one of the reasons why we've been so slow and frankly so ineffective at addressing issues like houselessness, to picking up litter, to combating gun violence. But the good news is I think every member of council is aware of that problem, and many of us are working together to try to overcome that. So for example, Commissioner Dan Ryan and I both control permits, or bureaus that issue permits. So I have water and environmental services, Dan has housing, and the Bureau of Development Services. So one of the things that we've done is we pulled together a task force and charged that task force with the mission of figuring out how we can reduce the time it takes to get building permits out the door by 30%. Right now, I'm sure you've all heard about how long it takes to get a permit, or if you've ever tried to build something, or even just like renovate something in your own house, this can take months and months and months. It's our commitment to try to get the time that takes down by about 30%. We're making good progress on that, and that will see fruit. The other thing that we're doing is that some of us who control public safety bureaus, I have the Bureau of Emergency Communications, the mayor has the police department, and Commissioner Hardesty has the fire bureau. We have appointed a commissioner or a director for coordinating public safety services. So one of the things that I expect us to do within the next month or so is to have this new coordinator for public safety services, to give him, it's Mike Myers, some of you might remember him from when he was the head of the Fire Bureau, and he will be basically the budget czar for all of our public safety services. So he'll have control over the police budget, he'll have control over the fire budget, and he'll have control actually over emergency services budget. So that's one of the strategies that we can use to actually begin to facilitate coordination across bureaus. I'm excited about that. It's desperately needed in the arena of public safety in particular. I'll also say, we can and actually do spend an enormous amount of time kind of trying to overcome the structural challenges that our commission form of government puts in front of us. But the real solution here is to modernize Portland's form of government. We're the last city in America of our size to embrace a commission form of government. Literally every other city abandoned this 100 years ago, which gives you a sense of how outdated this is. We have a citizens-led charter review committee, which is working right now. It's my understanding that they plan to send a ballot initiative to the voters in November 2022. And one of the things that will be in that ballot initiative is a proposal to modernize Portland City Hall, to move us away from the commission form of government towards, I don't know, I think they don't know what it's going to be yet, either a city manager system or a strong mayor system. We need to be able to coordinate across bureau lines. And until we actually change the charter, we're going to be spending an awful lot of time and energy trying to overcome just structural barriers, which will not fix themselves, which are just there. And we'll have a much better, much more efficient, much more coordinated government once we actually deal with the charter. So that's good news. Look for that on your November 2022 ballot. And if you are interested in helping update the charter, those folks meet every month, if not more than once a month. If you Google City of Portland Charter Review Commission, you can find all their documents. I think their past meetings have been videotaped, and you can take a look at those. And if you feel like zooming into one of their meetings in real time, take a look at when they're coming up and sit in. It's actually a fascinating process.
Okay, thank you. Julie Ramos is up next.
Julie?
Whoops.
Hi, Julie.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So my question or concern is about the level of noise in North Portland between the racetrack, which operates every week from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Even with my windows closed, it's really loud, and the street racing, and there's a lot of building going on in this section of town that starts at like 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're in charge of that, but what can I do?
Let's see, I think the noise office is in the Office of Civic Life, which is controlled by Commissioner Hardesty. So she is your best contact there. Some of the issues that you listed are pretty different. There's PRI who do their races, and I know sometimes I'm out at Delta Park for soccer tournaments and whatnot, and I know it's awfully loud. Street racing is another, and I think different issue, which I hear about very often. That's one of the reasons why my office, especially thanks to Katie and some other folks in my office, worked hard with the police department and our other colleagues on council to come up with an ordinance that actually provides us with some, a mechanism to hold people accountable for street racing. So we've passed that ordinance. Right now, if you're caught street racing, we actually can impound your vehicle and ask you to kind of do some community service. I'm hoping that that will begin to make a change here. Even though we've passed the ordinance, one of the things that I'm discovering is that we have also gotten rid of our traffic division. So we actually don't have the cops out there who need to enforce it. This is one of the things that I will be trying to fix as the council goes into its fall bump, which is this moment in the fall when we adjust our city budgets to address unmet needs. But Julie, one of the things, if you haven't reached out to the noise control office, I would encourage you to reach out to the noise control office to talk about what can be done there. And also it might be worth giving Commissioner Hardesty's office a call on this too, because I know it's an issue I hear about all over the city. And I think we need to do more there. I agree.
All right. So Will had a couple questions, and I think you just kind of touched on the drag racing. So a couple other topics he was asking about is, what is your opinion on the extreme political groups? And also, what is your opinion on the People for Portland campaign?
Extreme political groups. I assume that we are talking about Antifa and the Proud Boys. Obviously, neither of those groups represent my politics. On the other hand, you know, as a city commissioner, one of my duties is to support people's right to express their First Amendment rights. So I don't think they're looking for my approval. What I deeply oppose and working on is making sure that we can maintain order and safety on our streets. Those of you who know me very well know that I have deep roots in the Park Rose neighborhood, and I was heartbroken to see the melee of violence that we saw out there a couple of weeks ago. That's utterly unacceptable. I have been pressing the mayor and the police department to make arrests in response to that. And my office is also working with the city attorney's office to draft a new ordinance that would make it illegal to discharge an airsoft weapon in the public right of way or at a human being. I hope that we can bring that forward sometime in the very near future.
Do you want to talk about the People for Portland campaign?
Oh, the People for Portland campaign. Frankly, I think that they are talking about the same issues that I am talking about most of the time. I think they've tapped into a set of concerns that, you know, I think are broadly held, including by me. Frankly, I haven't met with anyone from the People for Portland campaign, but I very much do support everyone, holding City Hall accountable. I think that's important, and I support anyone who is reaching out and trying to get people involved in public discourse about how Portland can be a better city. So I think that's constructive too. And I'd much rather see us involved in kind of regular politics, which involves discussion and debates and conversations like the one we're having tonight, as opposed to rifles and violence in the streets. The violence in the streets is utterly unacceptable and is a cancer on our city and really needs to stop.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So David Crow, your question's up next. Do you want to unmute and say hi, or do you want me to ask the question for you?
You're welcome to read the question. Hi, Mingus. How you doing?
I'm doing great, David. How about you? I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, what's on your mind? I got, as long as I have you on the line, what was the question you wanted to, or set of issues you wanted to dig into?
Well, I was curious if you could address the current situation with 911 calls and the slow or lack of response.
Yeah. I take responsibility for this. I'm the commissioner in charge of 911. At 911, we manage both our 911 line and our non-emergency line. Between those two lines, we take in about 1 million calls a year. About half go to 911, half go to non-emergency. One of the realities and kind of shocking developments for literally the past year is the number of calls into non-emergency and 911 are up somewhere between 35 and 40% compared to last year, which is just an awfully, a surge like that is hard to prepare for. Frankly, we didn't prepare for it. And in practice, it takes about 18 months to bring on a new call 911 dispatcher. So we would have had to have foreseen this dramatic surge in 911 calls and non-emergency calls, frankly, before the pandemic hit us. And the call times there that we see on 911 and emergency or non-emergency have gone through the roof. I will confess on, I think on weekends when things are really busy, non-emergency is functionally non-functional. And we have to change. And we're doing several things to actually bring about change right away. I have hired new call dispatchers. So they've been onboarded for several months, and they're going through training, and they're getting to the point in training where they're actually being able to help some with the fielding calls. The other piece that we really need to make progress on is to recognize a mistake that we made as a city decades ago, and that was to marry 911 with non-emergency. You know, I'm the commissioner in charge of the Bureau of Emergency Communications. We are not the Bureau of Non-Emergency Communications. Those 500,000 non-emergency calls are one of the reasons why our 911 call times are so unacceptably long. Now, there's some good news here. We do have plans for making this better. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm rolling out some artificial intelligence that we'll use to help us manage the non-emergency line. So in the very near future, as in before the end of this year, when you call non-emergency, you'll have the option of basically talking to a computer will help guide you to the information that you need. That'll be enormously helpful. Now, the long-term vision here and the sort of structural fix is to move the non-responsibility for answering non-emergency calls out of the Bureau of Emergency Communications. And the plan for that is actually for those calls to ultimately go to 311, which is a new information service, which actually already exists. We have been developing it. It went online within the last several months, and that will be the future home for our non-emergency calls. They have only been doing that job for 60 days now, so they're still very much getting up to speed. There's a lot that they still need to do, but it's my goal to migrate non-emergency calls over to 311 by within the next year. I think by next summer, I need non-emergency to be answered by 311. This is something I talked to the mayor about a lot. The mayor's the commissioner in charge of 311. He shares this vision. So so that's the plan. In the meantime, we just need to implement and do the best we can. Although I do expect that call times will get better incrementally over the coming weeks as we both have our new staff people come online and help us more, as we have our artificial intelligence help us with non-emergency calls. And as we head into next summer, I expect 311 to be handling non-emergency calls, which means that that 500,000 calls that we're trying to field now will not be on our plate anymore, and we can just really focus in on picking up your 911 calls, and that's our goal, to pick up those 911 calls within a matter of seconds. And I'm holding my team accountable for meeting that goal. We want to be able to pick up your 911 calls within like 8 seconds.
So, Mingus, I used to work out there many years ago, and I do have some suggestions.
Sure.
And I was wondering if I could email them to your office.
Of course. Please do. Maybe Jackson can put our email address in the chat. I would love your suggestions, especially from someone who has actually done this work before. And frankly, even if your experience with 911 is just to call in and you have the experience as being a consumer, I need to know how that went, even if we wish we had done better. I share all those stories with my directors and my teams, and we do an autopsy on them and try to figure out how we can do better every day.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. I see Doreen raising her hand. But Katie, I guess you have a list too.
Yeah, but go ahead, Doreen, go ahead, and then we'll go to the ones in the chat.
Okay. I mean, it's.
Hey, Doreen, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So it came as a huge surprise to me, and I think other people, to realize that the city doesn't have its own garbage system. It's obviously not working this way. Is there a possibility that will change, that the city will create another bureau, or however add this on to something else to have the trash picked up downtown? Because it's not working right now.
So by this you mean picking up litter on the streets, I assume?
Well, I mean the mounds of garbage that we see around the city right now.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you know, one of the challenges here is that indeed the city does not have a bureau of trash management, and indeed maybe we should. But what we have done is we've invested millions of dollars in cleanup efforts, which will bear fruit. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty out there in the world, especially in the Portland world, but I actually have confidence about the garbage thing. Let me first put this problem into historical context. One of the reasons why this got so bad is that for a period of about 18 months, the city City Hall did not do basic maintenance to the city. So we were not picking up garbage. We were not intervening in houseless camps. And this is after 18 months of neglect. This is the Portland you see today is the result of that. That has begun to change. So we've partnered with Solve and have set aside certainly more than $4 million at this point to help Solve and other community groups go out and pick up garbage. We've actually picked up hundreds of tons of trash at this point. I'm told by the people who do this work, and I actually trust them on this one, is that we can get on top of and ahead of this problem. One of the challenges here is that because if you spend 18 months neglecting a problem, you don't fix it overnight. But I am told that within a year, we should actually be back to our pre-pandemic level of trashiness on the street, which is still unacceptable. But this is one problem that I think you'll notice will get better. And probably, I know it's always infuriating to see the piles of trash that are there, because they're definitely there. But this is one which I personally track. And we are doing a little bit better. Downtown looks a little bit better. It's not hard to find a trash pile and rats and all that. So I completely concede that we haven't conquered the problem yet. But I can also give you my word that we actually have a system for dealing with it. And those folks are actually doing pretty good work. And if you want to get involved here, and you haven't done this yet, I highly recommend that you participate in one of our Solve cleanups. They happen almost every day, and almost certainly, no matter where you live, there's going to be a Solve cleanup near you. It's where neighbors come together, and we'll give you a vest and trash pickers and garbage bags, and you go out for an hour or two, pick up trash in your neighborhood. It's one of the more satisfying things you can do as a citizen, because you can see progress in a matter of an hour, and you get to interact with your neighbors. And it's part of the solution. Trash is also difficult because it's labor intensive. And so we really do have to harness the labor and goodwill of the entire city in order to accomplish that. But Doreen, hold me accountable for this.
I absolutely will.
I think that we're on top of this one. I do need some time, but it's not like planning time. We're out there working every day. And I think that we'll get on top of this problem within the next.
And it's not an issue only for me. I mean, I know it's for you and for everybody in the city. It's people don't want to invite their friends back to town here.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. I trust you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for your trust.
So I see Betsy waving, and Betsy, you actually were the next person on the chat to go. So go ahead and unmute.
I don't, as far as I can see, I've worked with Solve a little bit, and I see that I certainly appreciate them. I appreciate the Adopt One block, but I have been told that I can't go near big camps. I cannot go on the expressway. 405 is full of trash right now.
Yeah.
And it's demoralizing to the people, the homeless people that are living there. There's so many elements of this, and I don't think volunteers, unless we change the way we use volunteers, can handle those kinds of big issues.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You know, Solve is mostly focused in on neighborhood cleanups. We also, to keep you safe and to respect people's rights, we kind of ask you not to intervene where people are camping. But we do have other groups. We have Hucker, which are folks who basically do outreach to our houseless community. Those are the folks who actually go into camps and pick up their garbage and whatnot, and sometimes they help right-size camps. So they're responsible for doing the really heavy lifting.
What's the name? Who are you talking about right now?
What's the new name? They dropped the H.
Yeah,
now,
it's
right?
the Impact Reduction Program, and part of the funding that he was speaking about earlier is going to them. I believe they're more than doubling in size, getting another truck, getting a lot more staff people to help with the trash around houseless camps.
Is it a city program or a nonprofit program?
It's a city program.
It's a pure city program. And it's worth Googling. When you see camps go away or you see a camp get cleaned up significantly, that is probably Hucker. I'm going to use the old name because I can't remember what the new name is. IRC. And you mentioned highway, and one of the challenging things here is that there are the city is divided into many different jurisdictions. So for example, cleaning up garbage in camps along the highway, you know, often that's a state-owned space, and so we have to negotiate with the state around that.
You mean ODOT? ODOT is who?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, and I'll give them credit. The mayor's office and ODOT have done a lot of negotiations about figuring out how to get some of those cleaned up. So it's not. I think everyone wants the same outcome. You may also notice sometimes that trash accumulates underneath bridges, and sort of just one of the weird ironies in our form of government is basically the space adjacent to the bridge is county space. So we have to negotiate with the county around getting like spaces underneath bridges cleaned up. It's way more complicated than you would think. On the other hand, some remarkable conversations have been happening with the county and the state around cleaning up these spaces.
Is somebody looking at the big picture and helping people all talk to each other?
Yeah, so there's the Clean and Green Action Table, which is one of the mayor's action tables that brings all these people together on a weekly basis. And there's a couple other pilot programs running right now. Trash for Peace is one where they help the houseless people clean up their own trash and get paid for it too. So there's several efforts going on at that table.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, of course.
All right. So Rodrigo, your question's up next. Would you like to ask it yourself? I feel like
I can.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is exciting. Thank you for taking the time to talk to everyone. I think it's a great step. I think the main question here is around like officer recruitment, right? Like obviously you mentioned, you know, doing some org changes and things like that. But basically, like from what I can tell, I've only lived here about 2 years. You know, what are we doing to recruit, attract, incentivize people to want to work here? It's a difficult environment. You know, like if I were to be a police officer, it'd be hard to convince me to do this. So what can we do to get more people? I think, you know, to get our staffing levels up.
A great question. And this is actually one that I'm thinking about an awful lot because it's true. Being a police officer is challenging work. It's dangerous work. And if you think about the experience of Portland police officers over the past several years, they have been demonized both by our elected officials and by many members of the public. So it's awfully difficult to serve and embrace a city that, you know, doesn't embrace you back. That's a reality. And we're doing some, I think, exciting and important work here. The Police Bureau actually is doing internal surveys with cops, especially cops who are leaving, to find out exactly why they're leaving. And, you know, some of it's obvious, some of it's less obvious. And we also have, I think we had the great fortune of having the Department of Justice actually help bring in some outside consultants who are about to begin a study which basically does this. Ultimately, it'll build towards a retention study where they'll reach out to the current cops and go, you know, what's working, what's not working, how can we make this job work better? So those will have a much better, I would say in the next 6 to 8 months, we'll have a much better understanding of where the police department is from a staffing point of view. What's driving people out of the job, and it'll also give us some ideas about what we can do to retain them. Another problem here is that we have kind of remarkably, and this is in my analysis, the real challenge here is that we have gutted the infrastructure for hiring cops. So in order to hire cops, you need to have recruiters, and we have cut our recruiting office in half. So I think we only have like 2 or 3 recruiters out there. And then to actually bring cops on board, you have to get them through a background check. And we also gutted the background checkers. And in fact, I literally had I was meeting with a bureau head today, not from the Police Bureau, but this issue came up where the Police Bureau is trying to make a hire for an analyst. I'll just tell you. And the analysts need to go through a background check. We've offered the job to 3 different people. But what happens is we offer you the job and then we have to get you to submit to a background check. And these people are going to pass the background check, but it takes us at this point, it takes us 3 months to get you through the background check because we only have like 9 background checkers left and we need about 18. And each one we offer them, we offer them the job, you just need to do the background check. They say, great, here's my paperwork. How long is this going to take? We say 3 months. And they're like, I can't wait 3 months. And we've gone through 3 different offers because of that, which means at this point, and that's with the police analyst, very much the same thing, when we're just trying to hire a rank and file cop. The good news here, these are relatively affordable positions. So as we go into the fall bump and certainly into as we develop the next budget, I'm going to go to my colleagues and say, let's hire 3 new recruiters and 9 more background investigators. Literally, if we do that, we can move from essentially not being able to get anyone through the system, which is kind of literally where we're at now, to the point where we can at least onboard people. And, I think the dirty secret here is it's not just that people don't want to work for us. We don't have our act together enough to actually close on the hire. So those are some changes that we can do there. The cultural changes I think are important. And also there's this dysfunctional cycle as we're understaffed in the Police Bureau, it just makes it an awfully hard job. You have to work long hours. You have to work at night. So the more understaffed we are, the more likely it is that people are going to retire because it's just not a great job. And you can move to police bureaus all across the region are hiring, and you can move out. You can work in Hillsborough where things are working better, and you don't have to deal with Portland dynamics.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure, of course.
Great. Next we have Vanessa Hughes.
Where are you, Vanessa?
And if anybody's having trouble raising their hands, I've seen a couple go up and then down. Just, you can unmute on the next time too, or send me a message.
Hi, this is Vanessa. Can you just raise your thumb if you can hear me? I'm having a little difficulty with technology. Awesome. I'm really delighted to be part of the conversation and hear all this information. And I want to offer this as some perspective, Commissioner Mapps. I'm sure you're aware, but I feel like I feel a sense of urgency. People in the city are pissed, and all of the information that you're giving, which is important, and the nuances of a very complex problem in our city are, one, not visible to the citizens. So the things that you're talking about, we don't know about them. Yeah. And I think part of the problem and part of the reason why people are selling their houses and moving and just generally feel disenfranchised is, while there may be these incremental steps happening, most of us don't know that they're happening. Yeah. So on the one hand, I'm very proud. I moved here 25 years ago from a very large city where, as a woman, I learned early on where to walk, where to be, how to comport oneself so that you were not a victim. And I've never felt that way in Portland. I've never felt unsafe until the last year. Yeah. And that is upsetting. So on the one hand, I love that Portland is not kicking the can down the road when it comes to these issues and is really trying to solve some very complicated problems. What I do not experience is a sense of urgency from this city, which is shit's on fire. And while I love that you're making these, or not making, while you're explaining in great detail with a lot of energy to us what's going on, there's a disconnect with what I feel to be a dumpster fire. So I'm just going to mute myself again and see what your thoughts are on that.
Vanessa, yeah, thanks for your frank comments. I agree with you. Number one, I think the city and City Hall in particular has done a bad job of communicating with the public, and which is one of the reasons why I hold my office and myself accountable for doing events like this and trying to communicate as clearly as I can where we're at, even when the news is not good. I also, you know, as a Portlander, a single dad, got an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old who, you know, I'm afraid to stick on a bus, you know, or have them walk home from school. And those fears are not unfounded. I feel the frustration and occasional rage about the state of our city. I don't think that City Hall has responded with the intensity and speed that we need to in order to address the challenges we have. You know, and you know, for those of you who know me, I'm a policy guy. I got a PhD in government. I've been accused of slowing things down, but I slow things down because I think it's important that we have a plan. And in some places we do have plans, like garbage I talked about. I think that we actually have a plan that will get this done. I think we're making progress in many different spaces around policing, but I don't know if we have a coherent policing vision that is actually going to work yet. And that is a problem that keeps me up at night. Houselessness also, I think that we need to double our intensity, triple our intensity. It cannot continue to go this way, frankly. I think we're at a space now where the reputational damage to our city has its own logic and gravity. So we're not just fighting COVID, we're not just fighting crime, we're not just fighting houselessness, we're fighting the fact that people have lost faith in the city and the city's ability to fix these problems. And that is a deadly and dangerous dynamic. I get it. I view it's my job to turn this around. And, you know, I want to tell you, I'm still hopeful that we can turn this around. You know, Portland's fundamentals are strong. You know, the people who live here are amazing and we all love the city. But I agree, we need to speak more clearly and move with more speed.
And I'm just going to thank you very much. Thank you. And I love the city, and I'm not giving up. I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. And it feels like the criminals are winning. It feels like there are not consequences for bad behavior. It feels like there are not consequences for violent behavior now. So while the intellectual part of me says, yes, of course, systemic change is time consuming and complex, the emotional part of me says, I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want it to feel like the criminals are winning, because that's really what it feels like.
Vanessa, the criminals are winning. We can't let them win, but as of today, I think that is the truth. You know, there were no arrests around the Park Rose riots. I believe that you might remember the shootout downtown, I think on that same day, where that guy who was firing shots downtown was in jail for a matter of hours, then back out on the street with bail, which probably actually cost him $70 out of his pocket. I passed ordinances which make street racing illegal, but we do not have enough cops to actually enforce these ordinances. You know, it's not just about, you know, sometimes it takes time for solutions to kick in. And sometimes I think we also have to just recognize that some of our strategies that we have employed have not worked, and we have to try something new. But I'm not leaving either. But your fear and concerns, I think, are valid and rooted in reality.
So we have 3 hands up, and we have about 10 minutes or so left. We can go over by a little bit to at least try to get to these last 3 questions. So Walter, and then Ola and Terry. Go ahead, Walter.
Hello,
Thank
Walter.
You. Mingus, so good to see you. And I want you to know, I'm proud to see you on the city council, and I believe the city's coming back.
Me too.
Just one little comment, forgive me for an answer, but the last set of remarks and concerns about people being pissed in the city, if you'll just allow me a personal opinion, I believe much of it starts with budget. And if you take the city's police force apart and discourage them, we'll get the results we have. But I want to talk about a different disconnect for just a moment, please. I'll be quick. One of the recent votes that you made puzzled me. You approved plans, and somehow you said, well, I see differences between the citizens and the bureaus, and I think you people can work it out. But I want you to know that in many cases, citizens have been working with the bureaus, and I find, you know me, involved with the Downtown Neighborhood Association.
Yeah, I do.
The citizens are finding, the neighborhoods associations are finding that their role in city functions is largely ignored. And it's a fundamental asset of this city is the citizen involvement. And being ignored separates city council members from the voting citizens in our community. When you say we could work things out, I know what you mean, but I want you to know in many cases we've tried. In one case I know of personally, we've tried for over a year, and our efforts were, our requests and suggestions and ideas were largely stonewalled. I'm proud of you. All the best. I voted for you, and I vote for you again.
Thank you, Walter. And I appreciate your support, because I also know that I probably made some votes on this council that, you know, were not that you had hoped would go a different way. I always appreciate your input and your perspective. I agree with you. For those of you who know me, I came out of the Office of Civic Life, amongst other places, where I was the guy in charge of the city's neighborhood association system, which is a job that mattered to me a lot, because I think our neighborhood association system is one of the things that helped Portland grow into the city that we love. You know, I think one of the distinctive things about Portland is that the 70s and 80s, we kind of did a radical and radically constructive experiment in democracy where we empowered neighborhoods to have a voice in City Hall, largely through the neighborhood association system. I think that's one of the reasons why we have such a rich fabric here in Portland and rich tradition of neighborhood events. You know, we just had the Belmont Street Fair, I think yesterday, if not the day before, and street fairs all throughout the city. You know, Portland, you know, no one really comes down to Portland to admire our tall skyscrapers. They come to explore our charming neighborhoods, and that's a principle that I think is just baked into the DNA of our city. And if we lose that, we also lose the city. I don't have the Office of Civic Life, which is where the neighborhood association system exists, although I have been advocating both in public and behind the scenes for reform in that bureau. And I think we're seeing some reform. You know, I'm told for the first time in years, actually, I hear staff over at the Office of Civic Life express hope. So that's good. At the same time, I'm not seeing, I also, you know, I at least up until very recently, I think I knew all the neighborhood association chairs in the city, all 99 of them. And I know that at this point, people do not feel supported and they don't feel heard. And fixing that is part of the culture change that we need in order to make the city work better. And so, Walter, I assure you that those are principles that are run in my blood, and I'll make sure to stand up for those points as we move forward. Thank you, and thank you for your commitment to making the city better. You really have.
Great. Okay, Ola.
Ola, are you there?
Oh, if not, maybe we'll go to Terry and circle back after Terry.
Okay.
Hey, Terry. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
sorry, Terry.
Thank goodness.
Can I just say that Vanessa said everything I wanted to say, but I did want to ask you, Mingus, is it your feeling that the city council members currently support a change in government?
Charter reform?
Yes.
I believe 4 members of council are on record as supporting charter reform. Commissioner Hardesty is on record as not supporting charter reform.
Okay, because I've only been in Portland 3 years, and I came here because it was the most European city I knew. I loved the public transport. Sure. None of my neighbors take it because they're afraid. Yeah. And we do not, and the neighborhood association, in my experience, is not enough. I come from Norman, Oklahoma, where we have a city council that represents the city. We vote for our city council person and they represent us, and we have somebody to go to. So, you know, I'm not going to leave, at least not in the next couple of years, but I just want to express my I'm horrified that we have the form of city government that we do. And I just don't think the neighborhood association it's certainly not working for me. And I want representation on the city council. I think that's really what we need. And if city council people now don't want to change, then that says a lot, I think. Anyway,
yep.
Thank you for being very honest with us. I really appreciate that.
Oh, of course. And Ola, one of the things I would do is just really encourage you to pay attention to the charter review process. We've stood up a citizen group, which is working completely independently. I think they have reached the same conclusions that you have, but they haven't drafted a proposal yet, but they will draft a proposal basically over the course of the next year. So this is a great time to parachute into that discussion and let them know how, what you're thinking. You can attend a meeting virtually, or you can actually send them a letter or an email in this day and age. So I think it's important that the Charter Review Committee hear your perspective, and I hope that.
Well, I plan to. Thanks. But
sure, excellent. And Terry, why don't we go? Well, I won't say the not
try
last,
to make
not
this
least.
quick. I'll try to make this
Thank
quick.
you, Terry.
It's actually kind of a double question.
Okay.
The first one's an easy question. I'll give you both of them. The first one's an easy question. How come we can't extend the street takeovers to the demonstrations and the various groups that are taking over our streets? You know, that kind of a law. And the second part also relates to the streets, particularly when I'm driving around in East County, and I'm out here a lot. I'm actually at the Midway Library right now, in the parking lot.
Yep.
But I see people walking out into traffic all the time. The other day, somebody crossed Division, and the light was green for Division, and here they were crossing in the crosswalk. Tonight, coming out here, there was two guys standing in a travel lane with a shopping cart, and everybody had to go around them. It's no wonder people are getting hit, and yet we're just saying, oh, we're just going to lower the speed, and that's going to take care of the problem. Yeah. We need to start talking to how pedestrians cross the street. So anyway, those are my two questions.
Well, those are great questions. The street takeover, to put this into context, this is Terry's kind of referencing the ordinance that we passed recently around people doing donuts, you know, taking over bridges and doing donuts and whatnot. And you're right, that ordinance was specifically focused in on car pieces. I'll point out something, Terry. You need to, and you know this, I know, but you can pass an ordinance, but if you don't have the staffing to enforce it, it doesn't do anything. And this is one of our problems here is we do not have a traffic division. We don't have a traffic division to enforce the street ordinances for cars, much less for people. And we saw that, frankly, out in Park Rose a couple of weeks ago. But I think you also raise a deeper, and so I think the answer for both of those questions also kind of has to deal with basically the need to reinstate the traffic division within the police department, so we don't have people literally taking over roads, and we don't have people literally having paintball wars on 122nd, and that's a police staffing thing. I think your question also raises an issue of how do we go about policing violent political protest. And I've been talking to the mayor and the police chief about this an awful lot. And I'll tell you, I know the police bureau is doing a sort of after action report on what happened up in Park Rose, and it's supposed to outline lessons learned. I think I know some I have my view about what some of those lessons are, but I look forward to seeing what the police department and the mayor think that the lessons from those from that incident and other incidents like it are. One of the things that we clearly need and do not have is a coherent strategy for managing especially violent political protest, you know, and one of my opinions is you can't obstruct the right of way. I think it's insane that we allow people to shoot strangers with airsoft weapons. I plan to make that illegal in the city of Portland. And there are, I think, many other, and we need to make arrests. We don't make arrests. We didn't make arrests in Park Rose. We didn't make arrests downtown. And you'll notice that some of the violent vandalism that we saw downtown started to go away once we actually made arrests, and then the DA actually started to prosecute people. So I hope that we do that. And I know we said Terry would be the last one, but I see John just raised his hand, and John's an old friend.
What about what about the people just walking out into the street, into traffic and stuff like? Because that happens all the time out in East County.
Absolutely.
And how do you? I mean, can we have an education program or something to?
Absolutely. And I do think that we should have an education campaign, and that's very much up Peabot's lane. So we can and should, I think, talk to Commissioner Hardesty to get her to do, her and the bureau that she controls, the Bureau of Transportation, to do more outreach and education about staying out of the street. I also think that if like cop cars were out there sometimes, so there's probably one cop car, you know, east of 82nd in daylight hours at any given time. So if we actually had a little bit of public safety interaction with folks who are, as we all see it, pushing their streetcars, their shopping carts in the middle of the street, just kind of wandering around in the middle of the street. A little bit of intervention there might actually kind of remind people of basic norms of kind of behavior in an organized society.
Sorry to cut in here, but thank you.
No, good questions all. And John, last but not least, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Fine. I just want to say thank you for taking this on. It just seems to me like a miserable job to have. To be, you guys get blamed for everything, and people are angry. I mean, all of us, I think, can agree with what Vanessa had to say so eloquently, but to have you thinking about these things so thoughtfully, and it's such a world of difference from, as we all know, from the person who was occupying that seat a year ago. And I'm just grateful to have you there. And I just want to say that it's just listening to this. I haven't been to one of these before, but I really appreciate the way you're doing this job. It really validates the support that many of us gave you. And I just think we're lucky. And thank you for doing this.
And John, you're going to make me cry, and not just because it's been a very long day. Well, thank you. And if you're happy with what's happening in my office, I also have to recognize my staff. Katie has been with me from before the beginning. Jackson has brought us new blood and new life. It is obviously a really challenging job, but I'll also tell you, it is without question the best job that I will ever have. I have been here, as I think I mentioned before, for about 8 months and 2 weeks, and it's absolutely true. I have made more lasting change the last 8 months and 2 weeks than I have in the previous 50 years of my life. And this change, a lot of the change and good things we've done will never be recognized. We've built some infrastructure that will literally be there for 200 years. We've invested in programs that I think are going to change people's lives. And it's just a real honor to be here. I want to thank you all for placing your trust in me. I know that not everyone on this call probably voted for me, but I really appreciate the fact that you come to the table. And I think that's the way that things get better in Portland, is that you build a table and you invite your neighbors to come and sit at that table, and we work out what we can do to make Portland a better city. I know these are really challenging times. I just won't lie to you about that, but I will also tell you the truth, and the truth is I'm really optimistic about Portland. We live in an incredible city. We have great resources. We just have really great luck. We got great people. And these challenges that we face today, I actually think each and every one of them, from crime to houselessness, to mental illness, to trash, I believe that we will conquer them. And I think that we'll conquer them and at least make significant progress in the sort of 3.5 years that I have left in this term. So please, please, please don't give up. Portland needs you, and we have a better tomorrow ahead of us. And with that, I should let you go eat your dinners.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Vivian.
Hi, Mingus.
How are you?
I'm all right.
Good. I'll call you.
Okay.
Not now. Bye-bye.